I was really nervous, but y'all already raised all the money, so we did it. Best speech ever. Congratulations. Because when the auctioneer went up, I said, whew, okay, good. It's not on me. But thank you all so much for having me. It's so amazing to be here. Actually, I've been to Seattle quite a few times, but it's almost always been about this issue. And it's been because there's so many amazing leaders here continuing to organize and lead the country on this issue. And it means a lot. It really does. For folks who don't know me, gun violence prevention work is something I didn't choose out of ambition or off of some crazy Indeed website. For me, I joined this movement by circumstance. In April 2013, April 21st, when me and my cousins were walking home from a party, we saw two guys get into an argument. We thought, okay, none of our business, we'll walk around them. But that argument exploded into gunfire, and one of the bullets hit me and hit two arteries. And it went from being one of the best nights of my life to one of the worst nights of my life. And I'll never forget that feeling of just being on the pavement and fighting for consciousness and just wondering, like, is this it? Will I never have the chance to raise a family or get married or even accomplish a sliver of my dreams, because I was much younger then, much slimmer too, actually. But I heard a little whisper that the fight's not over. Just hang in there. And so the ambulance came. They rushed me to the hospital. I thought finally I'll get some help. And when I arrived at the hospital, I was met with investigators instead of doctors and surgeons. And I remember being wheeled into a side room and questioned about my whereabouts and why was I there, where was my gun. And I found myself fighting for my life and my innocence at the same time. And that's where it hit me really hard that because of how I look, I was the suspect first and a person second. And for too long, the issue of gun violence, we've looked at it simply as a crime to solve and not a crisis to prevent. But this has now become, I think, like so many of you know, the leading cause of death for youth in America. Over 140,000 individuals are shot or injured. It's the leading cause of death for black men in America. It's also the leading cause of newly disabled Americans now, and has recently become the leading cause of death for pregnant women in America, ahead of childbirth complications. And these are stats that are terrifying, but I think like so many, these are real people in our lives. For me, after I was shot, I worked locally to help communities and neighborhoods impacted by violence. And I'll never forget hugging the mother of Micaiah Wilson. She was 5 years old, and she was shot while with $5 in her hand trying to buy ice cream in her neighborhood. Karan Brown, who was on the flag football team that I helped with, was shot and killed at a McDonald's just arguing over a water bottle. And then lastly, the one that hit closest with me was DeMarcos Pinckney, who was my mentee. And when I became to advocate in Washington, he stood with me on Capitol Hill. He pushed for some of these bills that we just applauded to buy. But at the age of 16, he was shot in his front porch with his cousins over a YouTube video that one of his friends posted. And so, like so many of you, we know that pain and loss is what's driven us to this fight. And while for me, I was fired up to give Congress hell, I was surprised to know in my first few days of advocacy that there were so many other soldiers in this fight. And I met folks from Washington, from Maine. I see my people in Maine. Y'all still over there, right? They ain't leave yet? Yeah, okay, good. Michigan and all over the country. And I want to give you all a round of applause for your activism. So thank you. Now here's the fun part. So we talked about the historic declines in homicides. In fact, we actually reduced homicides by 31% in the last 3 years. 31%, that's crazy. And that didn't come easy. It came because of so many historic changes that so many people in this room were a part of. So if I have a little bit of time, can I list a few of them all for you? Is that cool? In the back, that's all right? Okay, good. Okay, wait, thumbs up. Okay, so what's 782 that donated 50,000? Is that good with you? Okay. Well, whatever they say goes. I say whatever you want to say. Okay. But during those 3 years, we were the first administration to name gun violence a public health crisis. We passed the first law in 30 years, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. We created the first national suicide prevention strategy focused on firearms. We created the first National Mass Violence Resource Center, the first ever Extreme Risk Protection Order Resource Center, the first ever Community Violence Initiative and Prevention Initiative in the Department of Justice. We created the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline that over 11 million Americans have used. It's an amazing one. Funny story, I was at an event in, in Delaware? Arizona. And I said that, and this guy was like, yeah, I know. And he had a tattoo, a 988 on his arm. I said, man, that's quick. It's only been out for 2 years, but big deal. We created the first ever FEMA-style gun violence emergency response system with over 10 agencies, 100 staff, and $17 billion in resources to respond to mass shootings. So a big deal there. We launched the first ever Community Violence Awareness Week, the first ever federal guide on secure storage, the first ever gun trafficking analysis in 20 years. And if anybody listens to rap music, we did it in 4 volumes, so it's like a mixtape. You know, you can go through all 4 of them. Amazing work. We made gun trafficking a federal offense for the first time, actually prosecuted over 600 individuals. We released we released the first ever Surgeon General advisory naming gun violence as a public health crisis, which was a big one. Shut down over 420 rogue gun dealers. Shut down over 350 websites that were illegally selling firearms and ghost guns. Oh my gosh, I get a 2-minute warning. My list's still going though. But let me tighten it up there. One more major thing. We shut down the largest manufacturer of ghost guns. And for folks who don't know how big a deal that is, nearly a third of the homicides in Chicago were connected to ghost guns. So shutting down that largest manufacturer was huge. And we strengthened domestic violence prevention laws and actually put over $450 million into resources to prevent acts of domestic violence. So a great deal of work. And that came from a White House that pushed 54 executive actions, invested over $242 billion, but didn't do it alone. We knew that states across the country working hard, and literally in 2024, we saw 31 states pass life-saving bills, just like you all that passed the permit to purchase bill, so give yourselves a round of applause. But all of that built into how we saved so many lives. And you'll hear the media say, well, the big cities got it wrong and they're struggling. Well, even cities with over 1 million residents last year saw an average of 40% reduction. So we're seeing the steepest inclines in cities, in blue cities, where they have the resources, they have the commitments, and they also have the state laws in support of them. But we're in a moment now where so much of that is under attack. And I think you all are well aware, but I just want to highlight a few major things. Within 24 hours, our office was shut down, so I'm probably the first person that was dozed. Congratulations. I don't like Elon anyway, so it's cool. Right, clap to that, you know. But we know that they've taken efforts to dismantle the Department of Education. They're restructuring the Department of Justice. They cut $881 million from the Department of Justice focused on violence prevention, $400 million from AmeriCorps, $1 billion just last week to actually terminate youth mental health resources going to schools to prevent violence. So we're seeing the steepest attacks ever on the resources as well as the policies to prevent violence. But what Elon doesn't know and what Trump doesn't know is that the White House was never a destination for us. It was a vehicle. We knew that the White House never had the prescription of how we address violence. We just had a playbook that people from across the country built. And you all are a huge part of that. Everyone in this room, this alliance is a vehicle. Your ideas, your 60 bills, your 60 laws, those are the playbook. And we know that if they're not willing to fight in Washington, D.C. for us, well, Seattle, Washington, damn sure will. Am I wrong? And I'm getting all the timers over here, but I'm so proud to be in a room with so many fighters, so proud to be amongst leaders who are leading the way, not just for Washington, not just for Seattle, but for the entire country. And I know that in these very challenging times, this is not the time to let up. This is the time to fight harder, to be bolder. Like the Attorney General, 15 lawsuits? Let's make them 50, you know? Keep it up. But we got to fight as hard as possible. And so I want to do a quick exercise for you all. If you know me, you've done it before. Please raise your hands as high as you can. All right, that's good. 782, you doing it? Okay. All right. Now raise a little bit higher. And that's proof that no matter how hard you're fighting, you can fight a little bit harder. So when I say fight, I want you to say forward. Fight. 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 782. Fight. Awesome. Thank you all so much.